Okay, now.
All right.
Repeat that, please.
You have two articles in your readings about the emerging generation. We're just really going to tip of the iceberg here tonight. Jay did a 5 whole days module on this. This one's Starbucks Spirituality. This one is Looking for Leaders. This is just in the spring '06 issue of Leadership Magazine. So that's right hot off the presses. Okay, the emerging generation. The way we have traditionally expressed Christianity may be in trouble, but the future may hold new expressions of the Christian faith every bit as effective, faithful, meaningful, and world-transforming as those that we've known so far. Characteristics of this new emerging generation. They have very high self-esteem. Right? Our soccer team went 0-10, and everybody got a trophy. They are used to being celebrated, not necessarily for achieving, just for sort of showing up. They tend to be really more community-focused than previous generations. He used the term tribalism or connectivity, MySpace. Everybody has MySpace, and on there you have all your friends and everybody, the web that connects you. And you have that through technology, through cell phones, where people are text messaging each other. This is a highly connected generation that's growing up. A world without boundaries, right? Global, multi-ethnic, multicultural worldview. Entertainment-driven. They consume media. And they have the expectation of a comfortable life. 63% of current college graduates move back home. The question that they're asking is, and this was in the Starbucks Spirituality, right? Why should I trust you? Right? There is a continued, from earlier generations, there is still a continued questioning of authority. We're supposed to proclaim and demonstrate the kingdom of God. This generation probably will not be satisfied with proclamation alone. They probably will need to see demonstrations of the kingdom. And they really have some pretty serious trust issues. You have a lot of this generation is growing up in either broken homes or blended homes, or there's a lot of them have real trust issues. Isn't that just your reality? Is another one. There's a great, that whole whatever, right? If it works for you, there's not a real belief that there's an objective, absolute reality out there. It's all just how people are getting by. And one of the biggest challenges, the new apologetic. It's not, what are you going to do? Where are we going to go if you die tonight? That's not the question that this generation is asking at all. But they're asking questions about reality. What good is Christianity? Seeking out the pain in the world so you can engage it and see the Lord redeem it. We had this group, as far as community, this generation, we have a tendency to say, believe in Jesus. Jesus is the door. Walk through the door and experience all the blessings of the church and the church family. Our preaching is, Jesus standing at the door and knocking. You have to open the door and come in. All the blessings are inside. This generation is saying, let me come inside for a while. And let me see how the community is working. And then I may believe. We had a very stark example of this in our church recently. A well-educated couple, which is unusual for our church, came, and first talking to her, she seemed very new agey. She would talk about the studies she's done in Eastern religion, and now she's kind of checking this out. And the whole attitude was, we just want to hang out here a while. We want to see if this community really is one that we want to join, and this is something that we want to believe. And so they did. They hung around and they hung around. And eventually they believed and got baptized. And my wife meets with the wife now, and this wife suddenly has realized that it's all about Jesus. She said, I didn't really get it, why you guys kept making it all about Jesus all the time. She said, but I get it now. So they're saying, let us into your community. So that's different. And that may even affect your preaching and your pulpit calls and because this group says, let me come in, and let me be a part for a while, and really see if this is a redemptive community or not. That's a challenge for our churches, isn't it? That's a challenge to make it a redemptive community. The spiritual formation stream of these folks. If Christianity is not a quest for the perfect belief system, then what is left? In emerging culture, I believe it will be Christianity as a way of life or Christianity as a path of spiritual formation. This group is not as concerned about doctrine and believing the right doctrine. That's why they jump from denominations so easily, right? Because that's not really what they're looking for, the right set of beliefs, the right creed. They're looking for the community. And they're looking for, is this a place where I'm able to connect with God and with others? Not how can I believe right so I can go to heaven, but how can we live life to the full so God's will is done on earth as it is in heaven? That's not a bad thing to see. You see good and bad emerging here. You ought to be concerned with doctrine. Believing the right way is important. But at the same time, it's notable that this group really does want to encounter and experience God. They're looking for an authentic community. Right? Jesus never wrote a book or established a school. He created a community. Church growth of the 80s and 90s has given way for the quest for community. So you have these two opposing trends right now. One is, the mega church is getting mega-er because they have a lot of inertia, they have a lot of weight, a lot of momentum behind them, and money and programs, and then you've got people who are completely rejecting that and really not going to any traditional church, but just forming spiritual communities among the people that they're with and seeking God in that community. So you kind of have both these trends tracking at the same time here.
Gary,
Yeah.
what would the difference be between the experience of, let's say, my generation, where we sought out different options? Like we had a Monday night Bible study with believers from 5 to 7 other different churches in the city. Saturday morning was the Christian Businessmen's Committee, which was a parachurch kind of a thing. I know Thursdays, the Full Gospel Businessmen would meet at noon time, have a message, centered in Scripture. So, where is this any different than what we've just been through for the last 30, 40 years?
Okay, what you have described is I have a life over here, and I connect with Christians over this meal or at this event. Where they're saying, I want to connect with Christians over here. I want to get together with 4 or 5 Christian businessmen and form a company that is going to have an impact in this community, this downtrodden community.
Okay, where we would go back and live it out through our church.
Right. They're saying we want to live it out in the community.
So would that be akin to Campus Crusade for Christ?
Not exactly. Here's an example. Okay, jumping off, we talked I went up and heard this guy, I'm trying to remember. Okay, the book he wrote was called The Shape of Things to Come. And his last name, I think, is Frost. And he's from Australia. Came up and was speaking in Seattle. He said, we are now in post-Christian Australia. And he said, say this is 100% of your town. Okay, let's just be generous and say that 10% of them are in church. Okay, they're regular church members, attenders. Okay, 10%. Okay, probably being generous here, but sake of argument. Okay, then you've got 5%. So these are in church, And you've got 5% who, Easter Sunday, if you ask them, they would say, yeah, that's my church, but they're really not involved. But if something special happens, they might come. Okay. And then you've got another 5% who, okay, so what do we call these people? Nominal?
Occasional.
Occasional. Okay. Easter, Christmas people. Then you got another 5% who they used to go to church, but they got busy and they had a job. And if somebody near them or they knew somebody in the church invited them in, they would probably go. And there's a good potential that they might get back into it. Right? These people are thinking, yeah, I should probably get back into church. I'm not going now, not a member of one, but okay. So what do we call that? Positively predisposed people. Savables?
Savables?
Potential for being saved. That's funny. I wouldn't use that. Okay, for lack of a better word. Okay, the current programs that are very popular right now, say purpose-driven life. A purpose-driven life is aimed at really this 5%, right? Because it personalizes and saying it's not just the church that should have these 5 things. You personally should do these 5 things. When we did a purpose-driven life at our church, what it did was it brought the people that were on the periphery and brought them in. It didn't really bring anybody who was unsaved in. It brought kind of the peripheral people. Oh, they kind of got it more now, and that's great. And they entered more in purpose-driven life. Then we also do Alpha. And Alpha is, anything you ever want to know about Christianity, sign up for a 12-week program. We have a meal, we create a community, no stupid questions. Anything you want to ask about Alpha, here it is. And these people might do that. Yeah, I should get back into church. I heard they're having an Alpha, and so I'll sign up. Okay, so what's this other 80% look like? So this is people in the reach of the church, as it's currently composed and as the programs are currently run. So now you've got 80%. They did a study on this 80% in Australia, and they found that they really didn't have a problem with Jesus. The person of Jesus registered high in their respect and admiration and that kind of stuff. They had, for the most part, a huge problem with the church. Some of them violently so. Okay, so this 80% is really outside the current reach of the programs of the traditional church. So what are you going to do if you care about this 80%?
You go to them. He's asking how.
Well, you meet them in their comfort
You meet
zone.
them in their culture. You go to where they're at, and you have designed a church around them. Our church meets in a theater, so we get people, and we never are going to have a building. We're always going to be a theater church. So we go for people who like to go to places where they would not normally go, but they're not afraid to go to a theater, but they'd be afraid to go to a standard church building.
Right. Some of these people would never, no matter how great the program is of the speaker, darken the doorstep of a traditional church because of whatever past experiences they might have. Right. The thing that Frost talked about was he talked about the idea of the elders at the gate. Here are the elders at the gate. He said in Bible times, when a man was probably 40s or 50s, and his son was late teens, it would be time for the man to give the son his inheritance. Right? He didn't have to wait until he was dead. He gave his son the inheritance, and he took up his role as an elder at the gate. And their life expectancy was not, as long as it is now. So by 50, you could, hopefully be elder at the gate for another 10 years or so and live out. These elders at the gate, they acted as the collected pool of wisdom for this entire community. When somebody wanted to sell a cow, for a certain price, they'd check with the elders at the gate, or buy a plot of land, or marry this woman. They'd go to the elders at the gate. And the elders would, they had a lot of time on their hands, so they'd talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. And 2, 3, 4 days later, they'd come back and they'd give the collective wisdom of the elders to the community. So you can see how important that would be, that role, that wisdom role for that community. Frost was saying this is what the church should be for the society. But largely it's not. Right? The society does not go to the church, does not go to the collective wisdom of the people of God to enter in and solve its problems. Generally speaking, that doesn't happen. He said, if you want to design a way to get to this 80%, think about doing this. His example was in Sydney, he wanted to begin to have an outreach into the arts community, artists in Sydney. And, a group that, no church, no nothing, didn't, part of that 80%. And so he said 2 or 3 of them went and they entered that community. He said you need 2 things. If you're going to enter this community, you need consistency and you need spontaneity. I don't know how to spell that. How do you spell that?
A-N-I-E-T-Y. A-N-I-E-T-Y. Take the A from consistency and change it to an E and move it down.
Okay, spontaneity, spell for me. S-P-O.
A-N-T. Just S-P-O-N-T.
Yeah.
A-N. E-I-T-Y.
Okay. He said, you've got to be there. They need to see over time that you're there. So we go and we hang out at the places they hang out. We go to the restaurants they go to. We go to the pubs that they go to. We go to the art gallery showings that they go to. And we just hang out until we're kind of absorbed in the group or recognized as being part of that group. And then the spontaneity, when somebody says, hey, it's Joe's birthday, let's go, whatever, let's, go do this, go to a restaurant, you've got to be ready to go with them to do that. Spontaneity and consistency. Then he said, we wanted to have this elder at the gate role, so we said to ourselves, how can we give value to this group? And they realized that several of these artists were very gifted, but they were sort of nerdy. And they wouldn't really put themselves or their stuff out there, although it was really good stuff. So they said, why don't we have a gallery showing for you guys? And so they got the hall, they got the space, and they had a gallery showing for one of these artists in this community that they were now sort of a part of. And at the gallery showing, they said to the artist, you're supposed to get up and say something. You're supposed to welcome everybody. And the guy was saying, there's no way I can't speak in front of people. And so this Frost guy, so he gets up and, he's a pastor. And so he gets up and he's good in front of people. And he does a great job. He's funny and he's warm and he's welcoming. And everybody loves him. So all of a sudden, the community keeps coming to him. Hey, I'm having a show. Will you come and be the host of my show? And we got one next month. Will you come and be the host of that? So all of a sudden, he is an elder at the gate. Right? He is adding value to this community. And then, through just his life, and there's several of them doing this, they begin to talk about spiritual things. And he said that the trick comes when you have people that start believing, you have to plant the church in here. You can't now say, oh good, you believe, come down to First Baptist. You cannot do that. You've got to keep the church. You've got to keep the church in the context of where it is. Now this is really challenging, isn't it? Because we almost have to de-church ourselves if we're going to do this.
Shoot, you're going to de-Bible yourself too, and that's where I'm at. If there's commands right in the Bible, when do you get to that? That's what I'm dealing with. Because in the emerging church, there's a little clip about just what you talked about.
Right.
And they never give you the rest of the story.
But these guys, you can start planting the church here, and you can start having Bible studies here, but you got to keep it here. But there's no way that you can have consistency and spontaneity in a community like this if you're on every church board and you're teaching Sunday school and as long as you're heavily invested here, you can't do this.
That's what I was saying in my story about the Signal Hill Assembly of God down by Long Beach. They were all old people, gray hair. Pastor Shipley was really old. I think he was probably 50-something.
Wait a minute.
And they started that outreach downtown to the surfers and beach people and street people in Long Beach. And holy smokes, it was revolutionary. But they kept it down there.
Yeah, you got to do that.
I mean, we would go up occasionally and have church and freak them out up on the hill, but mostly we did everything down at the center, downtown.
Right. You had to keep it there. It had to look like what they were always used to. Yeah. He told another story about a ministry to people on water skiers, the wakeboarders and water skiers. They would have they had a boat, and they'd go out, and they would have emergency equipment on the boat. So if somebody broke down, they always knew that this boat would come and rescue them. Give them gas, do whatever they did, and eventually they formed a church that would meet on the side of the lake every time. It had to stay there in order to continue to be effective. So this is going to require different. How do you train leaders to do this? How do you form structures to do this? This is a challenge to us, isn't it? But when you look at this, we've got to do. We can't just keep doing this and hoping that people will come in. It's really not going to happen. Yeah.
Well, I think the question there is how do you do that in balance without losing the workers to the church and for the individual.
Without losing your workers for the church.
Yeah, the church can fall in on itself if you've got 8 or 10 or 12 of these off. I'm thinking of a smaller church.
It's going to take quite a restructuring, isn't it?
Yes, and then how do you prepare these people to go do that? To send them out.
Right.
To accomplish that and without having
Right. How do you support them?
And I'm a big family guy, without having the families fall out from under them to ruin their witness in the process.
I've been doing this kind of with the hockey thing. My problem is that I didn't, and I asked him this. I kind of told him what I was doing. He said you need to take 2 or 3 people in this. You've just been down there doing it alone. As long as you're doing this alone in this community, you can be looked at as well, just the religious guy or kind of a weirdo. But if you're doing this consistently with 2 or 3 people and intentionally praying for that community and wanting to plant the church, he said, it'll be much more effective.
I just new meaning to the frozen chosen.
There you go.
I can see a striking similarity to a church in Anchorage that started over 50 churches around the world with about 23 granddaughter churches and about 6 from that. They didn't all fly, but a lot of them are still going today. But they trained up the team for 2 years, and they would send 20 to 25 out to establish a church in Philadelphia or Mexico City or wherever they went. It did 2 things. It initiated new ministry in the communities where they went. But it also pulled the plug on, I'll use the phrase, new young upstarts in the church that thought they could preach better than pastor. And if they indeed felt that compelling call, then here was a chance for them, where the rubber meets the road. And the church also would send money with them, seed money to start up. And so I can see that model being applied here as like a mission of the church for a training project over a period of time to prepare. Like you say, don't let them go by themselves.
Right.
Mike, don't you do something like that?
In terms of just the different ways, it's not quite in the community like that, but it's more events where the church kind of invests in the community, but then you're back into the church.
All right, let's go on. The missional current, right? Bring together evangelism and social action, right? Home and foreign. In a pluralistic world, religion is valued by the benefits it brings to its non-adherents. Right? Part of the emergent community wants to see, if you plant, an urban church, is that going to help the homeless people? Not are the people in your church going to be happy and blessed. Is that going to bless the homeless people here? They want to see that the community, the redeemed community, has a positive impact on those that are not adherents. They don't like a rhetoric of exclusion. Right? There are blessings inside the church. Come on in. They like God expressing His love. Missio Dei, the God who is on mission. God who's expressing His love to all outsiders through our acts of kindness and service. Right? Join in our mission. Bring this generation into leadership. Worship experience with indigenous music, combined with ancient rites and an emphasis on sensory experience. It is unusual, with all the high-tech stuff that this generation is into, they also really like a connection with the ancient, right? Sort of the way the Celtic music all came back. Oh, this generation loved that. This connection with the ancient. And certainly that's something that we can tap into through the scriptures and the stories connecting with the ancient. They like to have the impression that they're part of the ongoing sweep of history, and not just that they've arrived and history started with them. Create cooperative organizations. They like a high sense of being together in the work. I remember this one couple that I told you about that came into our community to check it out for a while before they actually believed. We had a missionary speaker come, and I remember thinking, I wonder what they're going to think about this, because they're not believers. They're there sort of checking things out. And the missionary was from I can't remember which country, one of the African nations. And he was talking about their evangelistic events and stuff. And every once in a while, I was sort of looking over at this couple just to see how they were reacting. If they were going to just think that this was, imperialism or, whatever. And then he talked about how Christianity had reconciled two warring tribes, and they sat right up. And afterwards, that's what they wanted to talk to him about. Okay, Christianity reconciled two warring tribes. Okay, to them, that was what was valid. Not that I preached and this many African souls, committed to Christ. It's okay. Communities were reconciled. They loved that, and this community, this generation, they like that. They tapped into that. They like the themes of reconciliation. But too often, they've not seen churches become instruments of reconciliation. They see, churches, picketing against stuff and protesting against stuff rather than trying to move in and to help. Plan safe risks for this group. Young staffers need to know they're not being evaluated as much for their results as for their ability to understand and work in ways that reflect the missions and values. Right? So you send these guys out on a trip. It isn't, how many souls were won on your, evangelistic trip. You send them out with their mission and goals and say, to what extent do you feel like you fulfilled your mission and your goals? They're not as sort of outcome oriented as maybe the previous generation was. Understand the family connection. This generation, they really do yearn for family. Even the studies they've done on teenagers today, they're much more, ask what would be your favorite day. They would say, spending it with my mother or father, which, generations past would not have said that. This generation is more family connected. For many in this group, a dream day would include being with one of their parents. And you've got to keep it fun with this group. I remember going down to one emerging church, although it was kind of, I would say it was in between. But they had all, it was in Southern California, and they had all gone out to Disneyland, and on their, by their name tags in all the office was a picture of them, with one of the Disney characters. So everybody, you walk down the hall, there's that person with Pluto, there's that person with Mickey, there's that. I just thought it was just fun. It was fun to walk down the hall in that place. and I just thought, there's a lot of churches, everything like this, not dignified, it's not. This group, it has to be, there has to be an element of joy involved in it. It can't just be, drudgery to them. There's got to be an element of fun in it. Coordinate activities that enhance their sense of team. They like, successes celebrated, and you have to reward risk-taking. This generation, a lot because of the family turmoil, a lot of them are very risk-avoidant. Okay, that's the end of that one. There's so much more to say about emerging generation, but that's all we're going to say for now. Why don't we go ahead and take a